Yeah, it's got to show up in the thing first.
We're live already, so.
Beat up a pineapple. Da-da-da-da. In theory, it will show up. There's gonna be a on this stream if you're tuning in.
I need to mute it, but I don't know how.
While we get shenanigans in order.
There we go. I miss Fern. I miss Fern very much. But are we live? Are we live? It says it's live.
I don't know.
It's also.
I don't see the video showing up on
Oh my goodness.
any of the feeds.
It says that I'm live, and it says the stream health is not great, and that viewers are experiencing issues. It also says we've been live for a full minute now, but well, we won't start the show proper until Ari can get confirmation that we're actually live.
Actually, I don't see the No Excuses channel pop up in either the channel page or my subscription feed. So we are waiting to be sure if y'all are around and listening for some reason.
I don't ever understand what's going on here. I'll try copying this link to you. I'll put it in the live show chat since it's about the live show. See if you can get that to work at all. Come on.
Okay, it's got something I can load.
Well, apologies for the sheer staggering professionalism.
Yeah, hang on. Okay, let's make sure the audio's right. I need it to catch up to me. You need to talk to yourself a bit louder, Paul.
Okay, I'll just crank it up. I've still got some room to turn up the mic. How about that?
Yeah. Let's see. I gotta catch up.
Okay. Well, I guess we'll just do the opening shtick whenever works.
Okay, we're close enough. We can make it work.
So you can see things. Things are seeable.
I can see the FGO logo, and so yeah, I can hear us, and I see the FGO logo, and it's playing. So I'm assuming that means everything's good.
Okay.
So, for fear of the stream breaking, we're going to just have this technical shenaniganery at the start of the show, and we can start in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. How's it going, everyone, and welcome to a jank episode of No Excuses on VTWProductions.com and YouTube.com with your favorite show hosts, Aristill.
And Volasel and no Fern today because he's off doing fun things on holiday, like seeing Monty Python be performed on stage, and so on. But, yeah, we're here nevertheless, without him, and as a result, bumbling our way through the technical aspects of setting up the show as usual. Because not only is Fern the only one who knows how to do it, but he's also the one who figures it out every time YouTube changes it. So, yeah. But first of all, if you'd like to get involved with the show, you can do so by sending us email at noexcusesvtw@gmail.com, or you can join us in the Discord server by going and clicking on the link to the server in the show description beneath the video. You can follow us on the Twitter as well, but I haven't been tweeting lately.
Yeah, Twitter exists.
Yeah,
so yeah, you get the Librarian and Marshmallow Show, unfortunately, which are objectively the worst shows we do.
Yeah, there's not really any argument about that.
So, oh boy. We're also winging it this week. We really got nothing to run off of.
Yeah, it's been a quiet week like usual for the start of the year. Not really a great deal happening either on the home front or in the industry, but there've been a few little bits here and there, but nothing particularly spectacular. Nobody wants to make a big play this early in the year.
Yeah.
So I guess we will start with the weeks. Hello.
Go. Your week.
Oh, my week. I guess Fern's not here and you normally starts, isn't it? Okay, so I haven't done very much, as usual, really. This is the start of the week. This is the start of work again for me. I completed my holiday as I started, which was more or less sitting on my backside, drinking beer and eating junk food, which, as far as I'm concerned, is the ideal way to spend a holiday. But yeah, I've almost made it through my second playthrough of Trails in the Sky first chapter, so I'll probably bring that to a close very shortly, and then move on to second chapter before I lose my momentum, which is
You can
certainly like
get to the actual game. You'll have finished the prologue.
Yeah, it is very much a prologue, isn't it? Now that I'm not playing it standalone and I've been through it once before, its sort of prologue-ness is starting to stand out a lot more.
The game exists to set up the universe you're going to be in for 8+ games released now, and then whatever arcs they release in the future.
Yeah, I'm still enjoying it even the second time round though. Even though I'm practically cheating since I'm using my New Game Plus data to play it, but it's always entertaining watching the Kapoor family get their faces kicked in by whoever it is that they go up against. It doesn't really matter, but they never stop being smug for some reason. I'm not really sure why that is, but
that feeling when your name is Josette and you're so bimbo tier, the game actually rewards you for not having you in your party in the third game.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes I feel bad for them, but most of the time I don't. I mean, yeah, that's pretty much their tier. But yeah,
but
so
Tita's there, so it's K.
The thing is, I've got such a ton of other stuff to play as well that I'm going to have to really keep up the momentum to keep going. So just so that I don't get distracted, because I've got Nier Automata to play now as well. Plus I've got a handful of other JRPGs that really want my attention. Not long before the Christmas break, I picked up the Ireland trilogy of the Atelier games, and I got Blue Reflection as well at Christmas, and all of those are Gust games, and I'm particularly fond of their sound team's work, so I really want to try those out as well. But if I do that, then it'll be another 3 years before I get around to playing Trails in the Sky, and I'll have to probably start over again. So yeah, I'll probably have to just push on. Haven't had as much gaming time as usual this week because I'm attempting to learn to drive again, because I keep putting it off and then getting distracted and then losing the opportunity because I was busy being distracted and then picking it up again. At this point, there's not really much left for me to learn about driving, to be quite blunt, so much as there's a bunch of stuff left for me to learn about passing driving exams, which is a different kettle of fish from actual driving entirely, I'm starting to find out. Like, I have my current driving teacher, one of my colleagues at work, has assured me that even though when you're merging you probably won't see anything if you look over your shoulder and it's more or less a distraction compared to looking in the mirror, do it anyway, because if you don't you'll get in trouble.
Mm-hmm.
But I do. I look over my shoulder now and I can't see anything. Like, I see, the inside of the car. It's not really that helpful. But yeah, so there's stuff like that. Thankfully, I work in an industrial district where there's like 12 roundabouts within like 2 kilometers worth of driving, so I'm getting an awful lot of roundabout practice.
They put in a roundabout around here, and you need to understand there are no roundabouts in the USA. There are especially no roundabouts in the southern USA. This was a thing I had to look up the rules of the road for when I got home because I was too confused when I got to it the first time.
I've actually been told different things about the fine details of how to use a roundabout compared to various people. Like, one thing the thing that I've heard the most discrepancy on is I've heard that you treat a straight through exit on a roundabout exactly like every other exit on a roundabout, and I've also heard that if you're planning to use the straight through one, you don't need to indicate when coming on. But yeah, since there's a lot of roundabouts in Christchurch that aren't exactly there's no straight through exit, there's just exits branching off at random intervals, I think that I'll just go with the indicate all the time option. But yeah, so that's occupied a bit of my time. The Azure Lane events have ended for Christmas, New Year, and it is currently in holding pattern mode, which I appreciate because I'm trying to play too many mobile games now, because 2 is too many. It's
got card games on motorcycles.
Yep, they're bringing in the Yu-Gi-Oh reference character effectively. The retrofit, which becomes the card games on motorcycles meme. But since I don't use her at all, it's not really anything other than a meme to me. But yeah, I don't know what event is coming next, and I haven't been able to get a feel for how Azure Lane structures its event schedule on account of them playing a weird game of catch-up with the Japanese and Chinese servers, where they try and jam in every current event as well as all the old events at the same time. So, yeah, not really sure how that's going to work out, but it's getting there, and it's a fun sort of toy to play when you're switching your brain off, and it's very good for just passing time while you listen to something or watch a video on YouTube or whatever, compared to FGO, which is not as, the mechanics aren't as fun in the operative sense, but they require a lot more thought in order to execute on them. You know, once you've worked it out, you might be able to do it on autopilot, but until then you've got to pay careful attention to what you're doing for the most part. But FGO is doing a rerun of the Da Vinci event, which I'm deeply unhappy about, because the Da Vinci event was a lottery event, and the result is that we've now had 3 lottery events in quick succession, and lottery events are notoriously grindy. Like, really, really, really grindy. I don't
Like,
know.
set aside your weekend, you're going to be running the same map over and over for the entire time if you want to clear it grindy.
The thing with the Da Vinci event, though, is that it's not just one lottery, there are 2 lotteries.
Oh, joy.
Which is deeply troubling. Because that basically means that you've got to do your minimum 10 box clear on the first lottery and the minimum 10 box clear on the second lottery. That said, it is a rerun of a lottery event, and generally speaking, the drop rate is a little bit higher the second time round. And you've got, because I did this event, this was the first event that I got an appreciable quantity of the shop cleared, aside from my first binge on the Kara no Kyokai event. This was the first time I'd really just straight up done an event quite well, performed quite well during an event, and so I've got all the CEs lying around the place. And I accidentally had MLB'd 2 copies of one of them at some point, and I still had the extra copy around instead of getting rid of it, which is an accident, but a happy one, because I'd forgotten that it actually serves as an event CE, because this was one of the few events where regular CEs give event bonuses, ones that are part of the general pool. So I've still got those kicking around. It's been quite convenient for me in shortening the grind. So I'll grit my teeth and get through it, trying to put aside from my mind the thought that the next event is probably Setsubun, and the Setsubun event is also very, very grindy. But there's a weird throttling mechanic in Setsubun, in that when you clear a stage, as you're doing the sort of tower ascension portion, you exhaust characters and they have to go on cooldown. So you have to have a lot of characters raised and able to form a lot of competent teams as you climb the tower, because once you succeed with a team, they will burn out and go on cooldown for a few hours. So you'll have to, bring out the B team, and then the C team, and then the D team, and then the E team. So you can't just have your one A team of 6 awesome characters, and I say 6 because you also can't use supports. You've got to use only your own ones, which for non-waiver owners like me is going to be a rough call indeed. But yeah, I'm still looking forward to it because it's a novelty. They haven't done an event like it before or since. Hopefully since is just a matter of them trying to vary it up and not because it turned out to be an absolute disaster. But it's probably not horrible because nobody talks about it being horrible the way they talk about Sunzan going to the West as being a horrible event. But also nobody recalls it as being good the way everybody recalls Seraph as being good. So yeah, it's probably a middling event. But I don't know how they're going to make it very Western compatible, or if they'll even bother to try, since there is no country in the West, and I don't know if there's even any other countries in the East other than Japan that celebrate Setsubun, which, as far as I know, is an event about throwing beans at people or something. I'm not really sure. There's a lot I don't know about Japanese culture. Anyway, so I'm going to be grinding through that event this week, little by little. Hopefully I manage to clear everything, because as usual each lottery has 4 gold foos and a crystallized law in it, making them pretty much mandatory participation, give or take. Alright, what else? I have finished watching the previous season's anime, more or less, and they were pretty much a bit of a damp squib. A lot of them just sort of stopped after the arc without putting an ending on. And this is something that, I know it's a natural result of the way anime gets produced, in that you kind of don't have much of a choice other than to put together a story that doesn't close the ending off, but also closes the ending off enough to, get people that are not upset at being left with a cliffhanger, but also not cut off the opportunity of doing subsequent seasons. But there's been a lot of that recently, where they're getting pretty close to it's not quite a cliffhanger, but it's so blatantly not the end of the story that, you kind of want to see a bit more. Like the one about the little girl who was trying to basically invent books, that ends with her accomplishing her immediate goal, but by the end of the season she still hasn't managed to make any books, period. So the overarching goal of the story is not anywhere near being accomplished, but the story seems to have ended. I don't know if it's going to continue this season. I haven't seen any new episodes of it, so I don't know what's going on there. But she gains her immediate objective, which is she gets admitted as a priestess in the church, in a priestess in training. And the church is the only place in that fantasy world where they really have any number of books, because the scriptures are all written in books, and she's desperate to read some books, so she wants to become a priestess, and she manages to accomplish that. And it's a difficult process for her to get to that point, but she gets there, and then the arc ends, so she's achieved her immediate objective, but doesn't seem to go on. I could be wrong about that. Maybe that one's going to continue, because they left it pretty weird. But other ones like Choyoyu and that, they just sort of like, oh, we've finished dealing with our immediate threat. That is to say, we invented nuclear weapons in a fantasy world and have shown the power of nuclear deterrent. And now we're just going to end, even though we've just upended the world order by introducing nuclear deterrence to a fantasy world which has no such thing. Great. Now what? I guess we're not going to find out, since there's no new season being announced as far as I know. So, yeah. Babylonia is continuing. The FGO anime is continuing. And without missing a beat. They didn't have a mid-season break or anything like that. Thank goodness, because that story would suffer badly for it, since it's all about everything operating on a timer. But, yeah, that one's keeping on going. I looked at the list of shows for this season, and for the first time in a long time, not a single one of them in the list that I looked at, there might still be others besides, had the remotest amount of interest for me. They were all sounded completely banal. Like either, generic high school love comedy with an asinine twist, another isekai, another VR MMO, another this, that, and the other thing that we've seen 5 billion times already. The imagination quotient in this season of anime is pretty darn low. The only new one that sort of attracted my attention in the might watch category is that there's a new season of Railgun, which sort of surprised me since it dropped off the radar for a while, but the previous season of Index must have sort of fired up interest in the franchise, so they were able to do a spin-off one as well. But it's not really a high priority for me, so that'll give me some time to catch up on the video that's been backburnered over the past, couple years, really, where my video gaming has slowed down a little bit due to the prevalence of anime that I did think was worth watching, plus all the ones that looked so cringy that I had to see if they really were that cringy, and of course they always turned out to be. But yeah, I might have some more time for video over the course of the next season, and I would like to spend that making some inroads into Shadowbringers on FF14, but I just can't motivate myself to play with other people without any other people playing with me, so I'll have to try and convince Fern or Ari to play as well. Fern actually has been playing more than me of late, because he didn't have an incredibly bad laptop as his only PC to game on over the course of Christmas. But maybe I'll try and talk to him about it when he gets back and make some more progress. I think he's at the start of Stormblood now. Yeah.
Yeah.
But
I could. I'll have to set aside some time at some point to catch up, but I got eaten by trails.
Yeah, I understand that, especially since I intend to get myself eaten by trails before too long. But it's not hard to convince me to play Final Fantasy XIV. If you need some extra muscle, all you have to do is tell me you're going to be playing it at a time where I'm at my keys, and I'll play it. But so that's the thing. There was something else. What was it? I don't remember what it was. No, I don't remember what I was going to say. But
how adorable Tita is.
She barely appears. I'd forgotten how little her part is.
I guess in first chapter she only shows up for a little bit.
Yeah, and then basically has become a refugee. Like, she's just not there for very much of the story, and I had forgotten that she's there for such a short amount of time. I think she shows up again at the very, 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 very end of first chapter.
The last dungeon.
Yeah, but that's about it, really.
Yeah, she's like the second or third major party member you run into and add to your permanent party in SC.
Yeah. But there's not really a permanent party other than Estelle and Joshua for the most of first chapter. Everyone else is a rotating character.
In second chapter, Joshua is gone for obvious reasons. And so you get to pick either Shara or Agate to be your butt buddy for the first 7 chapters.
That's not a hard choice.
Agate?
You must be joking. The guy's a tool.
But yeah, he is.
Plus, he doesn't have a good. He doesn't have as good an AOE as Shira does anyway.
But he can S-craft every single turn.
But he's also a douche.
But S-craft every single turn.
Douchebag every single conversation.
There are a lot more conversations than random encounters, so I suppose that's the thing.
Yeah, I don't like him. I don't like him. He doesn't become likable in first chapter. Just doesn't happen.
He didn't. He hasn't had Tita give him his soup yet.
There hasn't been any soup situation that I can think of.
Okay, that might be second chapter when Tita fixes him with soup.
Yeah, there hasn't been any soup. There's just the only interaction that they've had is Tita doing something foolish, Agate saving her and getting poisoned, and then Tita basically nursing him until he gets better again. But that doesn't do anything to stop Agate being a complete tool, so... Yeah.
I don't know if it's because I had Agate in my party that I saw the scene with Tita soup. Because I did pick Agate, because I'm like, they gotta do something with this guy. He's just too big of a blockhead.
But if you've got Shara around, there might be more opportunities to see Olivier get drunk under the table.
That is true. Yes, that is true. Although that's more her friend Annette, who is now involved in terrorizing Olivier.
Well, that's because he underestimated that there could be anybody even worse. So.
And she has no special powers, by the way. But in 2, the super secret, you gotta pull out a guide to figure out the quest, ends with this dude who's in love with Annette. And you follow him from all across the world until you get back to your hometown and roll it. And then he challenges Annette to a drinking contest to win her love, and she's like, alright, you can try, man. And then she just kind of goes back to the guild. And then he sends you on a quest to go collect enough materials to take to the priest to build a potion that'll make him immune to the effects of alcohol for a few hours.
I see.
And he screws up the administration of the potion, so it only works for a little bit of the time before he starts feeling it, and it hits him all at once after he's been going toe to toe with her forever.
Well, he's gonna get what he deserves.
He died. Well, he's alive again in the next chapter, but we're not entirely sure how he got nursed back to health. He should have been dead.
Anyway, I don't think that there's actually a great deal more for me to talk about, although I feel like there was something. But okay, yeah, well, that'll be my week anyway. I don't foresee next week differing greatly, except that it'll be my first full week back at work, and I'm still sick of my job. That's not changed at all.
At least you weren't sick at your job.
I spent like 2 days this week working on some essentially paperwork, but we'd had some issues with an internal audit, and I spent like the entire first day was just me looking at papers trying to work out what the heck was wrong and how to fix it. And ultimately it turned out that the auditor had just happened to randomly select possibly the worst validation report we'd ever done, where the person who was doing it had just rushed through the entire process, taking every shortcut and doing the absolute bare minimum of work. So it turned into a non-compliance, an audit-based non-compliance that we needed to resolve. But it's basically just because somebody was taking shortcuts. Unfortunately, it unveiled that we have some documents, like some core documents on procedure that just don't exist. So I'm having to write them from scratch, basically. But unfortunately, I also know that having written those documents will all be scrapped before too long, because they'll go over to another documentation system. But in order to close the non-compliance report, we need to resolve it now, meaning that I have to write an interim set of documents which will be used until they are thrown away, and the new ones will replace them.
Don't you just love coworkers?
It's not just co-workers in this case, it's also just mindless bureaucracy, because they keep changing our documentation system and merging us and demerging us with other departments and that sort of thing, that we need to end up having all of these, stopgap measures and band-aids on everything, and it's just basically annoying busy work that I can't get around, and it's deeply, deeply frustrating. But I have to just, put up with it till I can find a better job. Hopefully
if you can invent a system that is identical to the current capitalism system we have right now, but find a way to cut all the bureaucracy out of it, you'd be the hero that saved the human race and came up with the best form of government.
I think the problem with capitalism is that it generates bureaucracy.
Yeah, I understand. I understand the paradox I'm requesting here, but you could dream.
Yeah. The thing is that the documents that I have to write involve a lot of maths, and maths is the part of my specialty that I am not specialising in, that I have no specialty in whatsoever. So I'm basically trying to abbreviate the maths down to the barest minimum possible, since probably nobody will ever read this document once I finish writing it, except the person who approves it as a document, and that it will never be looked at ever again. So I'm trying to prune everything back to sort of like a difference between two logs calculation, and then just construe that in different creative ways. The problem is, like, I know that I could get away with it because my report writing skills are up to scratch, that I could just make everything sound like it worked perfectly fine using the maths that I present, the simplified version of the validation procedure. But somebody who doesn't have the sort of talent for flim-flam that I do probably couldn't, which is a little bit concerning. So I hope we don't try and validate any new procedures while this document is outstanding, because I'm not sure if I could even adequately explain to another person what it is that I'm trying to do. And for whatever reason, IANS, the accreditation body, has accepted all of the submissions that we've made, even the real shortcut ones. So obviously, whichever functionary is reviewing the process over at IANS, who are effectively, subcontracted by the government, whoever's actually reviewing these things is perfectly happy to approve a bunch of stuff that, from my point of view as a professional microbiologist and an academic, would be grossly unsuitable to prove the case of validation. But, they accept it as sufficient, so who am I to judge them? They are the government. Anyway, I'll call my week over there, because I don't want to think about work anymore. It's depressing.
That's okay. Well,
not as nasty as your work, though. Your work was nasty on a whole new and spectacular level, which I had never conceived of. Although, we do have some pretty stinky activities. But they're stinky on the normal caliber of stinky.
Yeah, they're not stinky enough to knock out a bunch of people that deal with what I deal with regularly. So I know the libtards like to say their poop don't stink. They're wrong. And this is how my week started. I don't even remember what I did on Monday because it's not relevant, because when I went to a job site on Tuesday, it was just going to be another innocuous job site visit. I drugged the opossum with me because I didn't want to drive. I get there, and this whole little trip had a bunch of things in it that just made it stand out in my head from the second I got there. The first time we get there, we're driving along the road, and the bridge that we pass right, like not even a quarter mile before we get there, it's just covered in graffiti. Because I'm in downtown Atlanta, and it and the overpass right next to it, and the entire median wall right after it, as we're driving down the road, covered in graffiti. This is clearly not a good part of the town. We get another quarter mile down the road at the destination. All the graffiti has disappeared for that quarter mile. Just an abrupt cutoff. Like, this is where the private security patrols and they will shoot you. And so we get to the entrance of the MARTA station, and I'm like, the MARTA job ain't until like next month that we got to go on site for. He's like, no, the apartments that we're going to are right next to it. And I go, okay. And yeah, sure enough, right next to the MARTA station is this giant, brand new, ritzy, like 7-foot apartment building, or 7-story apartment building. And it is so just, I'm like, dude, they're living like spitting distance from what is clearly not the bad side, or what is clearly the bad side of town here. Who would want to live here? And so we go to meet the customer, and he's taking us inside, and we get in the elevator, and there's this couple, this dude, and he's got like perfect like casual clothes on, all designer name brands, the shiniest shoes you've ever seen in your life, and she's got her hair so done up and with so much conditioner in it, the sun might as well give up because it's not as shiny as her hair. And they both look at us and they look at all three of us, me, the opossum, and the customer, and they're staring at us like we're aliens, and the guy's mouth starts to gop open for a little bit. And it's just like, have you people never seen, normal people before?
So are they letting the riffraff in here now?
Yeah. And so we're in there with our blue jeans, our cheap Walmart polo shirts tucked into those blue jeans, and our work boots on. And we're like, oh, we're going down. And they were on like 7th floor. I'm like, oh, y'all can go first. They thought, I guess we were just going 1 floor down to the basement level, or to the underground parking deck. We were not. We get in there, and the customer, they get in behind us. He pulls out a key, and he opens up the panel, and he pushes B4, which is 2 floors below the foundation, and they are looking at us like, what are y'all doing? This was not in the script. And we step out into this little below foundation hutch that is not even as tall as my head. Like, I have to duck the entire time I'm in there. The ceiling comes down to halfway down the elevator doors, and they're looking at us like we just did something really weird, and that guy's mouth has not closed the entire time we're going down that elevator. And the elevator closes and goes away with them and takes them presumably to their top floor. So this was how this adventure started. And so we start. The problem with what we were going to fix was the system that moves every bit of water that comes from this 7-story apartment complex. So more than just a septic tank, it's all the water: the washing machines, the sinks, the the bathtubs, anything, the toilets. All the water goes to this tank, and the pump had gone bad. And what they had done was they had bought from a company that is so cheapo. When they put this thing up a couple years ago, you can buy their pumps on Amazon.
They come from some shady Chinese company.
No, they're a local company. They're just really, really bad, and they're really, really cheap.
Do they fabricate everything in their own business, or do they just buy nasty cheap parts from China, assemble them, and then sell them?
I have no idea what Zoller does, but whatever they do, it doesn't work. That pump will run for 2 years and then die, and then you get the problem. Yeah, and then you have to call us and go, we need something better. And then we're like, okay, hang on, we'll come save the day and charge you an arm and a leg for it. Which we did.
Well, I mean,
So we get
the thing about America is that people can afford to pay an arm and a leg, and people can afford to charge an arm and a leg because, you know, the government doesn't take all of your profits.
yeah. So we got there, and he's like, now, this is going to smell really bad. And we're like, okay, we've been around crap pits before. We know they smell bad. This should not faze us. Because normally there's a mind you're going into a job like this, like, just don't think about it, look for numbers, look for notes, fix what you can, and don't think about what's under your feet. You can get into that mindset if you do this enough. He opened that pit, and even he will back. Uh-oh, I got a red connection, Pickle.
Yeah, I'm hearing a lot of twangs coming from you.
Yeah. So it did what my connection just did, and he retched back. And the apostle... And I almost fell over. And it was bad, y'all. Like, we could package that up and use it as a bioweapon against Iran. That's how bad it was. And so, it turned out that whatever they had been pouring in this stupid thing was so caustic. These particular pumps for big systems like this have what we call a quick removal system. If they're in a deep pit, like, have to do what we eventually had to do. And it's 2 rails that are just big iron rods attached to the pumps that the pumps can slide up and down on, and a bunch of chains you can hook to the pumps to pull them out. And so you don't have to go down there. Well, whatever these rich libtards were pouring in their water supply was so corrosive, the chains were completely eaten through. Like, the chains were no longer long enough to even try to reattach them. They had eaten clean through them. And the big iron rods these were big 2.5, 3 inch iron 2.5 to 3 inches in diameter. Not small things. They were eaten halfway through.
What are they putting down their toilets?
We have no idea. But we went down there. Or rather, I had to go down there because I was the youngest. And so I put on one hazmat suit, and it was still smelled so bad even in that suit. I put on a second suit over it. And for those that don't know how on-site hazmat suits work, you can... they're basically a pair of boots, a pair of shiny yellow pants, and a yellow shirt with a big heavy hood on it with a big open face, it's got a little plasticky screen for a face so you can see out of it.
A face shield.
But it covers you. Yeah, it covers you completely. It was still too bad to move even with that on. The customer had predicted this and produced a second bigger hazmat suit to wear over the one that I had on. And so I put that thing on. They went to the other side of the room up there, as far away from that thing as I could get. They couldn't close it while I was down there because there's no source of light down there. And I can't exactly manipulate a flashlight or a phone when I'm wearing 2 hazmat suits. And I had to go down there and figure out what the heck the numbers were on this thing for what its horsepower was, what its full load amperage was, and try to find out what the heck else was broken to get more clues as to what was breaking and causing the problem. So I had to do investigation in liberal poop that smelled... Oh, goodness, you people don't understand how bad this smelled. This is why I'm inflicting it on all of you.
Well, you aren't really inflicting it on us because we have no conception of what you experienced. We aren't privy to those delights.
Just I think I put a picture of it in like live show chat or something. No, I didn't. That's right. I deliberately didn't to save some of you guys from it. I might stick it in there later just to be evil. We'll see how mean I'm feeling later. But it was bad, y'all.
It just looks like a big old pot of soup.
Yeah. And it was bad.
It's supposed to be clean down there, right?
It's supposed to at least not be wet. But it was just soupifying into this goopy, gelatinous mess. It doesn't do that if the pump's working right, or even if it hasn't clogged the outflow. Like, water should still be naturally moving this stuff. But whatever they're pouring down there superfied so hard that it just coagulated. And it was bad.
Delicious. Was it a hot day too?
Yes. And by yes, I mean no. Thankfully, it was freezing cold, actually. Because we're in the middle of winter.
Well, it would have been a lot more aromatic if it was warm.
We were two concrete levels below the foundation. So I actually don't think the heat would have mattered that much. You have to put these things really deep underground to get the system to run right for big buildings like that.
I see. Yeah, I don't have to deal with that. I still have to deal with a lot of poo at work though. We've got a test that we do for poultry farms, where we call it SQL testing, but basically, it's a way of appraising the average rate at which chickens that are slaughtered as poultry meat carry Campylobacter. And the way that they keep tabs on this is that when they slaughter the chicken, they keep the cecal sacs. A cecal sac is a part of the digestive canal of a chicken, which are just blind terminal gut chambers that are like a giant appendix, basically, and they fill up with stuff going through the intestines, and it ferments in there. It's a digestive thing. So they're basically the branches of dead-end intestine throughout the chicken's gut. And they keep all of these things, and they bag them up, and they send them to us. And we have to get them, and then we have to squeeze the contents out, and then streak them onto agar plates. So, so it's handling pure distilled chicken poop, basically.
Joy.
Nobody likes having to do the SQL testing, and it's become a very contentious matter at work because, like most workplaces, my work is divided into people with good work ethic and people with bad work ethic. And the people with good work ethic, they do the SQL samples. The people with a bad work ethic come up with reasons why there's no time to do them today and they need to be put off until they're not around. So, we've ended up with situations where, like, the same person is having to do, like, an entire week's worth of SQL samples at once because everybody else has found ideas why there is a good reason that they should be able to skive off on their day. That sort of thing.
You should mail all those people to Georgia and have me take them to a job site once. They won't think that's so bad anymore.
Yeah.
I won't even have to take them to the one that was this week. I'll take them to a regular one and they'll die.
Yeah. It's fairly aromatic, but it doesn't fill the entire room. Maybe only a quarter of it. So... yeah.
Yeah. So, that was fun. And by fun, I mean horrifying. And I feel like talking about it helps, like therapy. Oh my goodness. That was just bad. I never want to relive that again. So that wasn't the only fun thing that happened at work this week, though. I got to do something I thought I would never have to do again. I got to send a fax.
I don't know if our listeners know what a fax is.
And more than that, I got to make a brand new fax cover sheet.
I don't think I've ever even handled one of those. No, actually, I probably handled one of the old ones. I did work for a place that had a fax machine that used some really strange paper.
So,
So
there we go.
Necessary. Yeah. So does your fax machine print on regular paper, or does it print on the weird reels of like carbon black paper that they use for printing receipts at the supermarket?
Oh no! When our old fax machine broke and I couldn't talk the opossum out of just abandoning the dumb thing, I talked him into at least getting one that uses regular copy paper.
Oh, I see. Yeah, I'm mainly familiar with the ones that use like the carbon paper from receipt type systems. You know, the stuff that has a feminizing effect on you if you handle too much of it.
That stuff's in the adding machines on everybody's desk at work.
Oh yeah, your work still uses adding machines. I forgot. Not calculators, adding machines.
For those that are not dinosaurs, these office tools we're talking about are 40 years. Just when they were in use last. Adding machines, for those of you that don't know, are basically the thing that prints the receipt that when you go to a supermarket, except it's a manual calculator attached to one, and this is how we do in-house receipts on these things. This is what the opossum and the other employees that are old use for their calculators at their desk. I have used this thing maybe twice. I'm still on the same reel of little selenium tape that I've had.
They all have computers on their desks.
But those are arcane, mystical, magic devices that only Ari can operate.
And they all have phones.
Oh, they can operate those just fine.
For Facebook,
not
yeah.
computers.
But every phone has a built-in calculator as part of the standard toolbox.
Oh, don't tell them that. They'll put their phones down too, and then I won't be able to call them. I need them to do their job and get me information. But no, they use the adding machines as calculators. These are ancient tools that accountants used to use before calculators were mainstream.
Do they have glowing displays too, as opposed to liquid crystal ones?
They have like little LED light bulbs behind each of the,
like the ones
letter representations.
The ones that they had before they invented liquid crystal. The reason why liquid crystal has those, the numbers that are divided into segments, is because that's how they used to be structured on adding machines.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's definitely not an LCD. So, oh my goodness. But yeah, I had to go look up a template for a fax cover sheet and make one for our company to send to some people, and basically threaten as politely as possible that y'all need to pay your bill that's now for L. So we have a.
Have you ever actually had to sell a debt to a collection agency?
Nope, but no, not as far as I know. But this is actually a rather trivial invoice, at least for the type of stuff we move. It's like $1,200 or something.
Oh yeah.
And
so it was like a repair job or something.
No, it was some very small pump for like a gas, not a gas station, but a like those car wash places you'll see on the side of the road.
The New Zealand, they're all attached to gas stations. So no.
Okay, take the gas station off and just leave like only one window for the car wash and the other half just does admissions. It was like some teeny little outlet like that was a new piece of property in like Louisiana.
Right.
So it was just a teeny little pump. But we tried to mail them their invoice because they requested a physical invoice. The post office gave it back to us, and our P.O. box was like, "We can't find this place, dude. Doesn't exist." I'm like, okay. I will request them to give me the proper address. Well, they picked up the phone that time, gave me a new address. Okay, mail it again. Bounce back again. It's not the right address. I checked it 3 times. In fact, I probably checked it about 20 times to be sure I didn't fat finger anything, because I was starting to really freak out at this point. Nope, address is right. So, we try to call them. Well, they won't pick up when we call them now. Okay, send them emails. Nobody responds to the emails. So, the opossum's like, screw it, just fax them. I'm like, what? So I got to go figure out how to make a fax cover sheet. The only time I've sent a fax other than this week was when my granddaddy, when I was real little, was like, "You want to see how the fax machine works?" He took me in the back room and let me hear it scream at me. I thought it was the coolest thing in the world.
How noisy they were until you just mentioned it now.
Yeah, those things scream at you, man. I really wish he would cut that stupid fax line. Because while I'm sitting in the office, my desk is right next to the room where the fax machine is, and the fax machine is right next to the door. So whenever a fax comes through and it rings on the phone line, I have to be the guy that shouts to the whole office, "It's a fax!" if it's not a phone call, because the phones will ring when the fax machine rings and you're getting a fax. Did I mention people I work with are dinosaurs?
And apparently all your customers too.
Yes. Well, no, we just get advertisements on the stupid thing. We haven't got an actual anything from the fax machine.
There are people advertising along the fax lines?
It's always life insurance, people, if it makes you feel better.
I guess it's for people who are about to die. So...
Hopefully like the fax machine.
No, he's definitely going to replace it when it dies.
Oh, he's going to die before this one does. This thing's like state-of-the-art and everything.
What is
it's got all the bells and whistles.
What is the state of the art of fax machines, though?
I don't know, but it looks really fancy and has a whole lot of buttons on it that aren't just push the numbers and send, so I assume it does a whole lot of fun stuff.
Well, so does every Office photocopier, but nobody knows what any of those buttons do.
Yeah, our photocopier has a bunch of bells and whistles on it, but the only thing I know how to do is put a piece of paper in there and turn energy saver mode off and then press the number of copies I want and hit print.
I did have to learn how to send emails using the photocopier at work, because if you give a person a piece of paper at work, it will get recycled as scrap paper almost immediately.
Yeah. Thankfully we have, well, not thankfully actually, we have one printer at work that's a wireless printer that everybody uses, and it's also the scanner. Now, it's a really nice HP printer scanner wireless shenaniganery, but you can't print while somebody's scanning. And the amount of times per day I'll be scanning something and someone will be like, why isn't this thing printing? And they're standing right next to me while I'm scanning something to send to my computer. I'm like, it's scanning right this second. And they give me this disdainful look like, you should have waited on me for print stuff. I'm like, I can't see your computer, dude. I don't know when you're printing stuff.
Anyway, contrary to all the evidence, we are actually a gaming show.
Right, but the only thing I got to talk about is going to make me mad.
That's also true.
And we also need to stretch for time, so...
That's also true. Well, we don't really need to, because I don't know how to do breaks on this thing.
Yeah, so the 2-hour show will come in about an hour. Alright, so... I'm going to have to lean back in my chair and spin the mic, because I'm going to get mad if I'm sitting up straight. I'm going to get a little too fired up. I played one video game this week in the free time I did have. And I had to force myself to keep playing it, because I knew if I stopped, I was never going to pick it back up again, wouldn't be able to have a conversation about how bad it was. But I wanted this. This game was bad at this time in my pocket and ready to go for any conversation that may come up. For just free cause reasons, basically. And so, I've been playing Borderlands 3, and I mentioned I was poking at it last week. But I've got up to the last planet now. Everything about the gameplay is hit or miss. They do a whole lot of things that are really cool, and a whole lot of things that are really dumb. The story is all hot garbage. Every bit of the main story is just total hot royal garbage.
On one hand, I don't really expect anything from a Borderlands story. I expect it to basically be there to point you the direction you should go. But on the other hand, having an actively bad story could make an otherwise decent game incredibly unpleasant.
Because it isn't just bad, it's annoying. If it was just a bad story, the advice, play the game, skip the story, could apply. But it's obnoxious with how bad it is. And this is built entirely on the premise of your two main villains are Twitch streamers, LOL, how do you do, fellow kids? And that's all they are. They're just the most obnoxious Twitch streamers you can imagine. That's our villains. Not Handsome Jack, not even, like the Atlas Core, who was fairly generic but still serviceable. Like, no, we have Twitch streamers. And they execute it in the worst way possible. I do not care about spoilers for Borderlands 3 at all. I never have given them out because it's a Borderlands game, number one. Number two, it's garbage anyway, and I'm saving you some time. So if you're thinking maybe you'll save it for yourself, no. The recommendation I'm giving you is this game's story is so terrible, it's not worth saving the story for yourself. It's just that bad. So don't use that as ammunition to go buy the game. Just skip it. If you're thinking about, oh, I might want to see what happens in the Borderlands world for whatever weird reason you would want to do that. Because the best example I have in the main story, Maya, the siren, like half the player base's main from Borderlands 2, because she was the most fun, gets killed like a third into the story. And she gets killed by her apprentice being a whiny little teenager and going to a place. Maya's like, you're not ready for this yet, yo. You need to stay at the base, and you can come help me later after I've trained you a bit more after a few more years. No, I need to go right now. So Maya has to sacrifice herself by taking the hit for her whiny little teenager, and she dies, getting completely disintegrated. So, and like actively in pain, fading away disintegration, not zip blast where they could potentially be teleported somewhere else. No, she dead. And the characters are having a little memorial service on the ship, and they're trying to make jokes, and the Borderlands writing staff is clearly having a hard time making these jokes funny because they don't know how to do this type of humor. And then, in this semi-somber moment, the Twitch streamers give you a call on the ship, and Lilith thinks it's a great idea to answer the phone. These are the dudes that killed Maya, by the way. And so they've got pictures of Maya's death all over the screen, and they're dancing around those pictures and drawing little smiley faces on them and saying, turn that frown upside down, and acting like complete jerk waffles. And this isn't like Handsome Jack crossing the line levels of douchebaggery. This is just annoying. And it just is like, I don't know what tone you're going for with this scene. I don't know what you're trying to... what emotions you're trying to evoke. You're just wasting my time. I can make no read on this scene. This is just obnoxious.
I've been thinking about it since you talked to me about it, but I can't really get a beat on it either. I feel like on some gut level I can almost but not quite work out what they were going for, even if they missed the target entirely, but it doesn't seem really consistent with their goals. Because honestly it just speaks to the idea that they are bitter, out of touch boomers. Pretty much. Like that's all that I can really pull down from it, because the sort of obnoxiousness that Handsome Jack communicated himself with was sort of artisanal obnoxiousness. Like he had a character that was the person Handsome Jack, and he basically went through life looking down on other people, and his way of doing this was to basically be a smug douchebag every time he was communicating to anybody. And he's very much the sort of character that you would expect from, someone who's risen to the top of an absolutely cutthroat corporate ladder, using every nasty trick in the book to do it. Whereas the villains presented by Borderlands 3 are everybody's idea of just an obnoxious internet kiddie who's not worth paying any attention to. But the thing with obnoxious internet kiddies who are not worth paying attention to is that our feelings about that character are formed by the reality that that person is not important. So the reaction that you have to villains who are that same archetype, it's tapping into a reaction that is inappropriate, because the loathing that we have for Twitch kiddies is a loathing for their frivolity, for how worthless they are. The loathing that you have for mass murderers is a different type of creature, and you can't actually mash those two things together successfully. It's entirely true that you can have, in a dystopian future, you've got, the type of sociopaths who provide entertainment for people by bloodletting. It's something that has happened many, many times throughout human history. But attaching that Twitch streamer behaviour to them doesn't make any sense, because the Twitch streamer characterization is very founded on how shallow and frivolous Twitch streamers are. It's because they are not mass murderers that they behave that way.
Yeah, they have like live flays instead of or they have let's flays instead of live flay, or instead of let's plays. There we go. Too many words that intentionally sound similar. They have their little catchlines. Remember to like, follow, and obey as their cult leaders, because they play that joke up. They've unified all the bandits on Pandora with their let's flays.
Yeah, I think that maybe you could say that one of the underlying things which makes it obnoxious is that it is asking too much of suspension of disbelief. Because it is very easy to believe in Handsome Jack. Everybody has had a douchebag superior at some point. And knows what, upper corporate bullcrap can be like. And bringing the sort of stereotypical greed of a corporation like that to the fore as a villain is not unreasonable. But to position as demagogues and cult leaders two completely worthless individuals with no skills whatsoever it's not sensible. They have been artificially elevated by writing. It's not because they have any aspect of their character that enables them to do anything constructive. I mean, what Twitch streamer does things that are constructive? Very few of them, if any. Their money is made entirely off of being shallow online. Not of their ability to construct any kind of substantive organisation. Not of being able to unite any group of people. This was one of the complaints that I had about Ender's Game, when I read Ender's Game when I was younger, because everybody talked about what a great sci-fi story it was, right? But one of the things that stuck in my craw about it is that there's this, while Ender is doing his obnoxious Mary Sue being Ender shtick, wherever the heck it was that he was, this has been many years since I read it, he's got like two siblings or step-siblings or whatever, who basically overturn the government of the world or something and set themselves up as great leaders and visionaries simply by posting their political views on message boards online. Which, what we know in the real world is that sort of thing is completely worthless and dime a dozen. There is no online demagogue who has ever caused the overturning of any government anywhere. It does not happen. In fact, the reason it does not happen, the fact that it does not happen is the reason that nobody believed Hillary Clinton about Benghazi. When she said, it was because of a YouTube video. Nobody believed that. Nobody. Even the people who went along with the lie for appearances say didn't believe it because it's unreasonable and everybody knows it. You can't do that kind of thing. And so this one fact about this story, Ender's Game, stuck out in my mind, making it, to me, a bad book almost by itself, was because they had premised a major background event on something that was utterly impossible. And likewise, Borderlands 3 similarly positions, internet personality, brother and sister or whatever, like Ender's Game, causing a massive upheaval in organisation through doing nothing other than, shitposting. That doesn't happen. It doesn't. Yeah. Maybe it will at some point in the future, as our culture becomes increasingly degraded. Maybe it'd be shown that Borderlands 3 was right all along, but to the audience that Borderlands 3 is written to, they are simply positing something unnatural and disgusting.
That I can chuckle at a whole lot of stuff that pops up on the Donald or the Farms, but I don't want any single person that has an account on those websites to be in a position of any kind of power. If that happens, and it happened because they were on those websites, we need to start exercising some Second Amendment rights. Because that's horrifying.
Yeah, but my point is that just thinking out loud like that, my reasoning for them being obnoxious is simply, when it comes down to it, that they are impossible. like we are offended by that stereotype of Twitch streamers. Like we find them to be grotesque because their behavior is so shallow and farcical. As soon as they become, legitimate terrorists, you treat them like legitimate terrorists. They are simply, like a tornado, a force of nature that has to be withstood or subdued. Like it's not actually funny. There's a line there. Like Handsome Jack was not funny in the direct sense either. Like he wasn't presenting himself as a comedic figure. It was what he was comedic at was degree, not kind, right? Like he, in terms of humor, the humor comes out of Handsome Jack because he takes the obnoxious boss stereotype to the ad absurdum degree. He turns up the disdain for those he considers as his inferiors to the point where it becomes just silly, comical and silly. And so he does strange things like, strange rich person things like create a horse made entirely out of diamonds and name it Butt Stallion. Like that's something that's like, it plays into stereotypes of a person with too much power and money to make good decisions, but he's got so much power and money that it doesn't matter if those decisions are good or not. That's just an extension of something that we know in the real world. The two psychopath Twitch streamers is not an extension of something that we have in the real world. Like we stamped out gladiatorial fights because they were uncivilized. And it's disappeared from human culture. Twitch streaming, on the other hand, is part of present-day human culture and is not compatible with that.
Yeah. They just fail as villains in every way. And it's not just that they're represented as Twitch streamers. They're just badly written characters. Like, one of them is a ditz with a lot of power. She's a siren. And her superpower is she can suck up the life force of people and turn them to dust to make herself stronger. And she can suck up sirens to gain their powers.
Even that premise seems unbelievable to me. Because that's like... That follows the logic that... It's like the logic that Himegami follows in the Index series, and that Himegami is important because her superpower is to attract and destroy vampires, and it turns out that fundamentally she is the only proof that vampires exist because the power exists that sucks them up and destroys them. And so it's something that is overly specific, and the reason why she becomes a significant figure in her arc is because her power is so bizarre and specific. Because it's totally unreasonable that such a power should exist because vampires doesn't real. And only it turns out that they are real, but there's no way of ever proving it since they're all drawn to her and immediately destroyed. In this scenario, we've already got like pre-established canon about there are a fixed number of sirens in the series, and I presume that when one dies, another is born to take their place, or something like that. Yeah,
their power stuff goes up in the air. Tanis becomes the successor to Angel's powers. And it just finds the nearest, most compatible host.
Right, so yeah. The idea that part of this natural paradigm that has been going on for a ridiculous amount of time, as far as anybody can tell, and yet one of those is the ability to subvert that and absorb their powers, doesn't make any sense. Because it would have happened immediately when they were created.
And it's even weirder because her little brother was born the parasitic twin in a conjoined pair, so he has pseudo siren powers too.
Yeah, see that's another thing that doesn't like the thing with suspension of disbelief is that once you break the seal, everything becomes questionable. So it's not reasonable to do lots and lots of ridiculous things in a row. You've got to tamp down the amount of absurdity you've got. But they used up all of their credibility with the psychotic Twitch streamers things.
Yeah, and now their whole universe is in question. I could take the internet meme references at face value. Gage had them. She had her echo cast when you found her echo logs. littered around Pandora. She was the Met Girl in Borderlands 2.
But the
And
player point of view character has never, ever, ever been a focus of story.
yeah, and and they're just little side bits about her past, and that's fine. And they're not a focus of even a side quest. They're just little extra ha-has you can pick up. But these guys are just obnoxious, and they have all the mannerisms of Twitch things. The other side of the reason we revile Twitch streamers is their mannerisms are, in general, unappealing is a good word for it, but not heavy enough, I think. They're just outright gross. They seem like idiots with the way they move and talk.
It's because everything about them is farcical and insincere.
Yeah.
It's not true, and that's, I think, what really, on a sort of a gut level, offends people, is that you know they're being fake.
Yeah, so seeing two characters that are genuine in these type of behaviors, and seeing them do this all the diddly dang time, is just makes me want to pull my hair out every time they come on screen. And they are the worst part of the whole story. You could try and cobble together something that is bad but workable with the rest of the parts they have running with the story, but the two Twitch streamers just kill the whole thing.
Are they trying to accomplish anything in particular, or are they just two psychopaths who are running roughshod across the local area of the galaxy?
Oh, if we open the Great Vault on Pandora by opening up all the other vaults and letting out the super big scary monster, then we'll get all of the followers, man.
Yeah, see, that doesn't make any sense either. Like, how does that logic follow? It's, we're going to kill everybody on the planet, and people will send us their likes.
Yeah, the last boss battle was...
along with all of our followers.
Yeah. So, the last boss fight was the male twin. He's the one that ate Maya. And he's using her face-lock powers to pull the moon down closer to Pandora, because it turns out the vault key for the Mega Gate on Pandora is the moon.
But Maya couldn't do that.
But he's juiced on iridium, I guess.
Maya couldn't do that when she was juiced on iridium either.
I don't know. Well, I carried you. I got into like 4-digit levels of iridium in my bags, and she couldn't pull down no moons. So
well, I mean, like Lilith had every piece of iridium they had in Sanctuary, and she almost died just moving it a few hundred meters.
But it's okay. Scooter got them engines working,
and she
catch your ride.
And she spent her entire life training to use her powers, and not being a Twitch streamer.
But no, the parasitic twin of a siren with magic pseudo-siren powers eats Maya, and now he can face-lock the moon and drag it to Earth. Or Pandora. Because reasons.
Could Maya even force pull with her phase lock? I don't remember.
Not in gameplay, but I think in some of the cutscenes she can move the face lock around a little bit.
See, because what this reminds me of is the new Star Wars movie.
Yeah. Oh, and by the way, when you inevitably beat the male not siren, Maya's powers get released from him and go to the derpy teenager that got her killed. Because of course they do.
Right. Is the derpy teenager a diversity hire?
No, she's just a regular girl. She's just an angsty teenage girl that is on Athena's planet of Athenas. Or not Athena's planet. She's on, I'm brain farting on her name now. Maya's planet of Athenas, where she's the head honcho there running a Jedi training camp, basically. And, she's Maya's top apprentice. And, she's like 16, something like that. Just a teenage girl, regular-ass girl. And she insists, Maya, I'm ready to go hunt the vaults. I've been training with you forever. No, kiddo, listen. We're going to go let out one of the big scary monsters and have to punch it in the face. You don't know how dangerous this thing is. You need to stay on the ship. And, of course, what does she do? She sneaks out and comes to prove herself to Maya. And Maya, after you beat the boss, she was there the whole time, and she helps you a little bit getting to the boss. You and Maya, or mostly you, take out the boss, and then Maya has to save the little idiot because she's gotten in the way of the Twitch streamers and has and they're holding the teenager hostage to make sure that Maya has to make a choice that where she basically has to die to save the kid. So it's all this kid's fault.
The reason why I say it reminds me of the new Star Wars movie, which I haven't seen, is that one of the things that I've seen people reviewing it saying, because I don't care about the new Star Wars spoilers either, because Star Wars is pretty much dead to me since Disney. But one of the things that a lot of people I've heard say about it is that they have made the Force so ridiculously powerful that it's almost like it doesn't really matter anymore. It's not important anymore, and it's not cool anymore, because you've got Rey able to pull a spaceship out of orbit and blow it up with the Force, sort of thing. And Yoda had to bust his green balls in order to lift an X-wing out of a swamp, because the Force was portrayed traditionally as a very subtle thing that nudges reality in your direction.
Yeah.
Rather than something that just allows you to dramatically overpower it. That's what made the Emperor at the end of Return of the Jedi seem like such an abomination, is that the most powerful Force user you had seen fighting up until that point was Darth Vader, and the Force only helped him by nudging things in subtle ways to his advantage. Whereas, Palpatine, as the embodiment of all evil, was able to twist it into direct attacks. But in the Disney incarnation of the Force is just magic. There are no limitations on it. It simply allows you to overpower the world in accordance with your whims. And so they make the characters do these, and it's like they're not playing by rules anymore. They aren't actually doing any. There's no challenge for them anymore. Everything is just a matter of pitting your will against somebody else's will, and that's all that there is to it. It's just a contest of power, and these people happen to win the lottery and be born with magic. And I say that this is similar to Borderlands 3 because the key thing that made the Sirens not the rulers of the universe was that their powers had very harsh limitations on them. They could do very particular things, and only after extensive training, much like the Force. If you've got a villain now who suddenly, he vampirizes a set of siren powers from a siren during the course of the story, therefore he hasn't had those powers for very long, and is suddenly able to wield them perfectly and yank the moon out of orbit, then it's just like you've made him into an all-powerful wizard. And so they're not really siren powers anymore. You've just created an arbitrary supervillain.
Yeah, but just because we can't have any kind of non-diversity hire be the main villain bad guy, when you kill him and you get him, the little twerp gets Maya's powers, his sister just kind of walks up while he's still alive and eats him with her powers for some reason. Granted, at this point, I was really not paying attention to the story and probably even had headphones on listening to a podcast or something. That's how much they were starting to annoy me. So there might have been context there for this, but I genuinely didn't care.
Yeah, well, the short version is that it really does sound like the story has gone completely to hell in a handbasket.
Yeah, it's really bad. There is a few redeeming side quests, though. Most of the side quests, ping pong between flat humor and woke garbage. But there's a couple that stand out. And I'll only tell the story of one because it's the only one I can remember most. There's one side quest where you get a call from Brick. And Brick's like, my dude, you gotta help me find Mordecai's bird. It flew away from the base. If he loses another bird, he's gonna flip. He's gonna kill himself, man. You gotta find this bird. And he leaves his echo cast on his echo thing on by accident while he goes to find Mordecai to distract him while you go look for the bird. And he takes Mordecai on the most ridiculous filler side quest missions you can imagine. And Mordecai's just going, why we gotta go find 50 crystals again, Brick? You say so, man. And they just doing these side quests. You're looking for this stupid bird, and Brick's trying to communicate hints to you on how to find the bird. You're in a mine flying through, and there's a cave in at one point, and Brick's like, "Oh, you know, Mordecai, if we found some explosives, I bet this would go a lot easier." He says it like underlined in the subtitles as a note to you that you need explosives to blow up the door or where the cave-in happens. And so you go on this wild goose hunt, and Mordecai's getting more and more clued on that something weird's going on as Brick comes up with more ridiculous side quests for them to go do while you're in the mine. And eventually you find the bird and lead it back to town. And Mordecai, and the quest ends in such a cute way, where the bird has picked up a piece of trash in the mine and has brought it back to town and dropped it in its new nest it's making. It has a new egg in it. Mordecai's like, "Oh yeah, I knew Talon was gone the whole time." And Brick's like, "What?" He's like, "Oh yeah, you didn't see the egg? Talon's mom now. So she's making a nest." And Brick's like, "Oh." And Mordecai's like, "Well, it's good to know you're thinking about me though, man." It was just a really cute side quest. So, I really liked that one. That is easily the best side quest in the game so far. What you actually do in the quest is just a bunch of asinine garbage to follow the bird. There's nothing interesting that happens at all. But the dialogue between Brick and Mordecai on their open echo comms, with Brick trying to give you help without giving away the gig to Mordecai, is hilarious.
Yeah, so I think the take home from this, though, is that Borderlands sucks any time that they try and be serious. Like, every time it's about being super serial, it starts to suck.
Yeah. They're good at being over the top, and they're good at just playing the joke card. If they stick in that wheelhouse, what you get is pretty acceptable. When they try to make something coherent with those things into an actual first-serve story, that's when you start tearing your hair out.
Like, they really, their effective villainizing of Handsome Jack was fundamentally carried out with relation to how he treats his daughter, right? Like that's ultimately it. But you see, that's it's carried off in a really subtle way, because
it's carried off in a believable way too. Because you can understand a dad that has a dangerous daughter that he loves but knows can't go anywhere because he thinks she'll hurt people, and why he would lose his mind over that and go crazy and lock her in a room forever.
But you see, the thing is that what that does effectively is it casts into a new light all of his other villainous behaviour, because now all of the stuff which was just comedic villainy of, you know, calling you names and carrying out convoluted plans to trick you so that he can feel superior to you and that sort of thing, all of that crap suddenly takes on a different light because it makes him into a real person as opposed to a caricature. But it sounds like the villains in Borderlands 3 are just caricatures the entire time.
Yeah, they have no depth.
This is like they do the next most extreme thing that they can think of.
Like, you can... There are echologues in throughout the game of Borderlands 2 that give you Handsome Jack's backstory and why he is the way he is, and how he slowly basically went insane and became a megamaniacal, corporate insane dude. And it all stems from his daughter accidentally killing his mom, or her mom. So you can understand, even if you're not the type of person that would have a complete mental snap from something like that, how somebody would. That is a very reasonable justification for a character in a piece of fiction to completely lose their marbles.
Yeah, especially considering what Handsome Jack's circumstances are. Like, he's already positioned in a place where the sheer execution of conniving and power is what makes the world go round. Like, his entire world is one where you have to be a complete prick in order to get things to go your way, and if you aren't a bigger prick than everybody around you, you go straight to hell. So that his worldview doesn't accommodate anything other than extreme reactions.
Yeah. And they actually do a bit to hurt this, I think, with one section where you go into an old Hyperion facility, and Tannis
absorbed Angel's powers not too long after Angel died, apparently. So she's having these powers for a while, and she wants you to go learn about Angel a little bit and figure out what she was like and how she got to the point she was at and stuff like that as a side quest. And the side quest really hurts Jack's story a lot. Not that it changes the story of how Angel got locked in a room forever, but or even what Jack did. It just does a lot to highlight that Handsome Jack was a better villain than what we got right now.
Yeah, it's like if you're still trading on a character that's no longer around, maybe your current characters aren't all that great.
Because at the end of this, I'm like, if I didn't know who this guy's name was, and I was just starting Borderlands 3, my first reaction would be like, I want to know more about this villain. So he's hurt in the way that he's now in the same franchise and a main villain that shares the main villain billing with these two idiots.
Yeah, it's pretty tragic, but I mean, we saw the encroaching wokitude a long way off, and that is always accompanied by failings in other areas because your priorities are now no longer where they should be.
Mm-hmm.
Right, so let's put that aside.
With the tanks.
Let's put that aside and talk about mechanics.
Right. So, bad mechanics first. Don't let me forget the good ones because I don't want to be unfair, because there are some good changes. But bad mechanics first. The elephant in the room is the map. The map is just almost unusable. It's so bad. For those of you that are sane, in every game that has the option, you lock your mini-map rotation so that the map is always facing north and your little character arrow will rotate. I tried this, but there's a problem. When you open up the full map, even if the mini-map is locked, the full map is not. So when you open up the full map, the full rotated so that relative north is whatever your direction your character is currently facing. So what this means is the map will be spun a different direction from the mini-map if you lock your mini-map when you open the full map. So locking the mini-map is pointless. Furthermore, there just aren't enough waypoints or markers on the map to be useful. The maps in general are very hard to manipulate. All the areas in this game are fracking huge relative to other Borderlands zones, and the quote big zones where there would normally be like one per section of the story in Borderlands 2 are now absolutely ginormous monsters that take forever to navigate with only like 2 fast travel stations in them. It's bad. And the worst part is the way you discover stuff on the map. When you first load into a new area, you can see the whole outline of the map. What's in that outline, though, you have to go to see. Only problem is, you only reveal about 2 character links from your character model. So 2 character heights from your character model will be revealed as you patrol the map. What this turns the game into is anytime you get to a new zone, you start cutting the grass.
Oh boy.
And for those of you that are unfortunately sheltered enough not to have enjoyed the activity of cutting the grass, you start at the edges of the map and spiral your way in until you revealed the whole map, following the line left by the previous cut. This is the most obnoxious thing in the world, and where most of my playtime has gone, to cutting the grass.
How can you make such a rookie mistake? Like, there is no conceivable way in which that could add to the quality or enjoyment of the game whatsoever. Like, there's just not no explanation, no way that could be the case. And yet,
it's bad.
And yet.
Yeah. And there are some objectives that just don't have markers on the map, and no way to turn them on. Location markers are not there for named areas, and you need to physically walk into each area, some of them being barely bigger than your character model, to get the location discovery to pop. It will not. It will show you objectives you can find and discover and collectibles you can find and discover, but not gather yet on the map. So you'll waste your time climbing up a giant hill and doing all kinds of jumping shenanigans, only to figure out you don't get the tool you need to read this Iridian inscription until like almost at the end of the game. It's bad, really, really bad, and over half of my gameplay time has been spent navigating or figuring out how to wrangle the maps to figure out where I've been and where I'm going. It's painful, incredibly painful. What else? The guns have all been radically reworked, and this is obviously the most important part of the video game, because it's a video game about guns that go shooty shooty bang bang. And we have a whole lot of good ideas with some of the guns, and a whole lot of bad ideas. Now, first off, the first good thing they did was they completely trashed slag. It's gone. No more slag.
Thank the heavens. Thing was just a job. It's like, oh well, everybody's got a maximum HP buff on them, and you have to remove it before you can feasibly fight them.
Yeah, it's like every enemy effectively has damage reduction to 0 until you slag them in any of the overpowered levels in overpowered difficulties in Borderlands 2. So it was practically a mandatory debuff. That got so out of hand that in Borderlands 2 they patched slag to last for twice the duration when the player applies it to all enemies. Because it was so mandatory.
Patch the entire thing out, but people would have got butt mad about their slag guns not being great anymore.
Yeah, it was really bad. So, slag has been replaced with a much more fun element called radiation. Radiation, when you hit an enemy, you do a very small amount of neutrally damaging dot to that enemy. But if that enemy gets near another enemy, that other enemy will take a truckload of damage. So this is a much more fun debuff to play around with. There's strategical setup to it, and it's not mandatory. So it just, in general, becomes a more fun thing to play with. It's a very good change and a very good replacement for slag. Let's see. What else? Cryo is back, and Cryo is still busted to anything that doesn't resist it. If you want to completely trivialize the game, you can get a gun with Cryo on it. This was introduced in pre-sequel. I wish it would have taken a hike with pre-sequel, but it's back, unfortunately. It is just a incredibly busted debuff that does no damage, but it will gradually slow an enemy that is not immune to it over time with every bullet that hits that triggers the cryo effect. And when it gets enough debuffs, it turns into a solid pillar of ice, even if it's a badass. And you can melee it for like 1,000% melee damage, or you can just unload free headshots all day while it can't do anything.
I see.
So cryo is back and still busted. The gun manufacturers have all had a rework to them, supplemented by the down button on the D-pad. The down button on the D-pad now is a mode switch button, and some manufacturers make use of this. Previously, if a gun wanted to have 2 alternate firing modes, and I thought this was perfectly fine, to be completely honest, we had what was called burst fire while zoomed, but this applies to any alternate firing method. You would have to be, when you were looking down the scopes, the gun would shoot differently than when you were shooting from the hip. Now you can toggle these alternate fire modes just by pressing down on the D-pad. This particularly affects Dahl, who would have the burst fire option. It also affects Maliwan and one of the other elemental heavy ones, I forget which. So that when you get a gun with an element on it, and this is actually a good change despite it seeming really overpowered on the surface, because in late game Borderlands, you need specific elements for specific fights. And having to carry around extra guns in your backpack and do inventory shenanigans by switching your guns out is tedious and a mess. So, but now, every of the heavy elemental dude's guns have a chance to roll 2 elements. So you can get a dual element version of a gun so you're not completely sunk when this good gun you've been using is completely worthless now because it was a corrosive gun and now you're against corrosive enemies or dudes with shields. So you can switch it to whatever its secondary is and still use the gun. This is a very welcome change, because previously what you would have to do when you got to in-game Borderlands is you would just have to carry around 8 of these things with stars so you didn't accidentally vendor them in your bag and switch to them as appropriate. Now you can at least get by and manage with what works. If you, as long as it's got an alternate fire that will hit the monster for damage that isn't trivial. TDR got the best upgrades. They have done so much with these silly little guns when you throw them for the reload. And my favorite has been it growing legs and running around.
Well, that was one of their big marquee selling points in the trailer.
It's great for sprinting through areas, because if you got a bunch of dudes just chasing you and you're just trying to go pick up that waypoint you missed, or go get something out of a level, you can just sprint and keep chucking TDR grenades or TDR turrets on the ground. They'll grow little legs and start running after all the monsters chasing you. And the gun I have has a flamethrower on it right now. It's one of the old legendaries from Borderlands 2. And this thing got a new guns with legs effect on it. And so there's a bunch of little flamethrowers running around lighting everything on fire. And it's actually a really, really funny gun to watch go to town on people. So, and you can totally sit there in front of the boss while it's in the phase change and just have this little gun going, and just every time it expends 1 ammo, just chuck it on the ground, and then just keep doing that over and over again to get a billion little turrets shooting the boss. And the boss can kill them if it hits them once. They only have like 1 HP. But while it's in its phase change, as soon as it becomes vulnerable, it's going to lose like 25% of its HP from all the little flamethrowers chasing it. Even if it is going to insta-jib them all at the end of it. But it's a really fun gun. Jacobs is Jacobs. They are 1 stock unit standard, good handling, good accuracy, heavy hitting gun. And you'll be using Jacobs a lot. And unfortunately, Jacobs doesn't come until about 3/4 of the way through the game. You can get Jacobs guns before then, but they intentionally lock them away because I think they realized they buffed Jacobs a little too much with just the raw base stats they gave him, because Jacobs become terrible in Borderlands 2.
Yeah, because they make the type weaknesses too specific, pretty much. And Slag pretty much only helps when you're using Elemental, and Elemental is everything at high difficulty levels because you are always trying to counter an armor type.
Yeah, so because you cannot get that elemental damage bonus, Jacobs just completely fell off. They have compensated for this by just jacking Jacob's stats through the roof. I can hit fire my Jacobs sniper rifle and hit enemies from across the map with no problem. That thing has 0 recoil. It effectively has 100% handling and 100% accuracy, and hits like a tanker truck. It has a scope on it. It has a really good scope on it. Don't need it. So you go to the Jacobs homeworld in this game as one of the worlds. Finally, you get to see what Jacobs is like. And unfortunately, this means you get to meet the gay lover of Hammerlock, and I mean that literally.
Because who isn't in this universe?
Yeah, like, no joke, by the way. As of Borderlands 3, almost half the cast is gay. There's some kind of rainbow alphabet people. So, if that's the thing you're on the lookout for, and takes points away from the game, bear that in mind. I think you know what it does for me, so... And for Vol. But yeah, the other guns... I can't... Maliwan has got the most radical overhaul. They used to be the big, heavy, super elemental damage type gun. Maliwan has been reworked into gimmicky energy weapons. These have wonky firing rates, like you have to charge them before you shoot them, or they will auto-fire until they overheat, and they have to cool down again, or they will have modular charging, or they'll shoot a constant stream out of them. It's just really, really wonky stuff, and most of it is not very fun to handle. Some of the charge guns are okay. They make some of the weirder. They make the wub step gun, and the wub step gun is about their most usable weapon, and it's really overpowered because it penetrates whatever it hits, so it'll keep going to the next target. So if you can funnel any area enemies, you can wub step them all at once. And it also bypasses guards like the spider ants and stuff, and it'll just hit their weak point right away. So yeah, stuff like that. The maps I have a huge problem with in general. Like, not the map, the actual map you read, but the level design of these maps is just bad. There are very few realistic waypoints you can identify on your first run through the maps. They are either long linear hallways or giant open blobs that just are way too big. There have a whole lot of verticality to a bunch of them, with random elevation changes and jumps that make it very hard to figure out where you're going and what level you're on. It's a mess. And I do not like it, Sam I Am. This is not something that's easy to describe, but when you're playing the game, you'll notice it. And, yeah. Vehicle combat has gotten a lot better, though, thankfully, for these big old maps. After you cut the grass, you can actually play with the vehicle. And the vehicle customization options, there is the D wheel from Yu-Gi-Oh! 5Ds. is a bike, so it's just a wheel that you sit in the middle of and can ride around with little turrets on the side.
And play card games.
Presumably. And this thing's very first wheel variant you get is called the hover wheel. And it lets you, if you jump off a ramp, you can activate the hover wheel and you'll glide for a little bit. So it's a pretty fun vehicle to use. It's light armor, but it's very maneuverable and very fast. And then you have the standard Outrider, which we've had since Borderlands 1. It does not have the machine gun anymore for its secondary turret. It has a missile launcher. You unlock a spike wheel for it later, instead of a missile launcher, it chucks a spike and it'll roll along the ground until it explodes. And then you have the auto rocket, which is a barrage of smaller than the big missile, but shoots a bunch of little damaging rockets that you get near the end of the game. And then you have the big heavy Outrider, which is exactly the same as it was in Borderlands 2. I think it even uses the same weapon options. So the vehicles are actually really fun, but vehicles lead a nice segue to another two problems. The first is one of the collectibles. To get some of the vehicle collectibles, you have to hijack enemy vehicles and drive them back to a vehicle spawn point. Now, you have no idea of telling if an enemy vehicle has anything new on it, from a paint job to a new weapon or wheel type or whatever, until you steal it and play with the options yourself and drive it back to this point. So, finishing that collection is go get a guide and get lucky, or good luck. And then the biggest problem with vehicles. Whoever did the AI for vehicles and flying enemies in this game was functionally an artard. Because what will happen with 50% of these enemy types... Now, I'm not joking. Almost every other one I've run into has done this. They will stop attacking you, start to drive away, and then start doing donuts. And they just won't stop. Even if you start shooting them. And this has happened to nearly every single vehicle, every single rack, every single flying Varkid, anything in the air or that drives. This happens. And there's no way to break them out of this loop that I can tell. They just get stuck. And there does not seem to be anything that causes it. It just will happen sometimes. So, it's really weird. Make of that what you will. But yeah, it basically means the vehicle sections are incredibly trivial, because all you gotta do is look at them funny and they'll start doing donuts instead of fighting you.
I don't know why they've dropped so many of these balls. Like, it seems like a lot of the problems are sort of things that they just didn't think hard enough about.
It shows a lack of QA testing, I think. That or they live in Cali, and all they cared about was, oh, look at this gay character. I love it so much. All these problems with the game, I don't care. You got a gay... I bet you dollars to donuts. That is exactly why their QA testing went bad.
I don't know. I don't know what their internal practices are, but either way, it's just not. But these problems didn't exist in Borderlands 2. How have they gone backwards? Like they probably didn't even exist in pre-sequel.
I do not. I tried to forget pre-sequel because pre-sequel wasn't just story bad; it was mechanically bad. Like the game was not fun to play. So, yeah. I don't know where they're going with the story at the very end. I'm probably not even going to keep the volume on, and I'll just read the subtitles with the podcast on. It's just completely turned me off.
Well, if you've
like Borderlands 2.
If you've killed off one of the twins already, then presumably you're just about done.
I'm on what all the guide sites say is the last planet. Because not everything's marked on the map. To be sure I got everything, I gotta go pull up maps on the guide sites. And apparently, these people that play Borderlands 3, despite being some of the most obsessive people on the planet previously when it came to data collection, they can't be bothered to cut the grass. Because the maps all have black streaks all over them where they haven't revealed the map.
Right.
And so none of the maps are finished. Just suck it up and cut the grass.
I don't want to cut the grass. I don't want to play it at all.
You're not some guy that's going to make a guide for the game.
No,
if you make a guide for Borderlands 3 and you skimp out on cutting the grass, I'm calling you out. You better cut that grass.
I don't think it's likely to happen. Either that I will cut the grass or that I will make a guide for Borderlands 3, which I have no intention whatsoever of playing. And honestly, before you said any of this, I already didn't intend to play because it looked to me like a sort of basically just a franchise cash grab. They were just doing another iteration of Borderlands. Nothing that they advertised ahead of time looked remotely revolutionary or even evolutionary for that matter. The game didn't even look any better. It was just, it's another Borderlands. Cool, I've already got some of those. I haven't played all the DLCs. If I want to do that, I can do that. I don't need to take on the rest of the bullcrap that you're trying to feed me. It's just not necessary.
You could convince me easier to play with you in Borderlands if you said, hey, I'm going to play through Borderlands 2 again. You want to play another Siren? Oh, yeah, I can do that. But if you came to me and said, hey, I just bought Borderlands 3, you want to come suffer with me? I'm going to be like, no.
No, I done my time. I paid my debt to society.
I did this so you wouldn't do that. Yeah, it is effectively a step back in my book because I would rather play the game that came before this game, and I know that is the case, and this is fresh in my mind because I just finished a Borderlands 2 mega replay about 3 or 4 months ago.
I like how after 60 seconds you've already edited the existence of pre-sequel out of your mind.
It doesn't exist. I did not deliver 120 white guns to a random mailbox. That didn't happen. I don't know what you're talking about, Willis. Yeah, the game... There are moments in it that are okay. The general gunplay and gun feel does feel better overall. But all the stuff it loses in the transition doesn't make it worth it. When you hit a critical point with stuff annoying you in a video game, you start taking the nitpicks more seriously and they start to pile on harder in your own brain. And Borderlands 3 is the perfect case of this. Where every little me now because so much of the rest of the game has annoyed me, and this is stuff I would easily forgive in any other game. Like just we have a little bit of texture pop in here. The menu's lagging a little bit because I've been running the game too long. I would forgive this in other games if they hadn't annoyed me, but Borderlands crossed a line somewhere, and now it's just a very frustrating game for me to play. And I can't tell you what that point was, but something very early on in my play through this game, and I just completely made me go, I don't care anymore. And just had me looking for things I hate about it. And I tried to go in and look at this game with open eyes. I tried as hard as I could. and it's still just it bit me in the butt. So at the end of the day, due to the issues I mentioned, and several more I haven't, that could easily be game breakers, like the lag in the menu when switching, when just opening up your main menu and checking your Echo stuff in your inventory and junk. The UI also hasn't evolved, by the way, since Borderlands 2. It's the exact same UI from Borderlands 2, but laggier.
But that's such a bad UI, generally speaking.
Yeah.
Why are they not learning their lesson? I don't know, maybe it works well on console? I don't know. How do you find it? Because, I mean, in the case of Skyrim, like, the Skyrim UI, I personally felt was completely appalling. But you can just download Sky UI on the PC, and then it becomes a PC UI as opposed to a weird controller thing. But the Borderlands one is just garbage no matter which angle you look at it.
Yeah, because you gotta go. It's just too many movements of the D-pad to get to where you need to go to just change a weapon out. Dang it! But yeah, due to all these reasons, I can't give it a recommendation. I would say solidly, unless for this isn't worth your time right now. It might be worth your time with some patches and some DLC comes out and they sell you the game a year edition for $15, like they always do. But until then, I would steer clear of it.
They aren't going to patch in a good story, though.
Yeah.
The most that you can hope for is that they'll come up with some incredibly cool DLC, but that'll still, A, require you to play through the rest of the game, and B, most likely they won't come up with incredibly cool DLC because it'll be some meme-tastic bullcrap like Five Nights at Freddy's Borderlands Edition or something.
Oh, it's even worse. I heard they threw their hands up in the air and put Handsome Jack as the boss of the first DLC. Because everybody, even the shills for Borderlands 3, hate the twins. Everybody hates them. The fact that that's a writing gaffe didn't even get the woke people to defend them.
The thing is that the style of writing gaffe that it is not defensible because, number one, if you find Twitch streamers revolting and hate every aspect of them, then these ones will just make you hate them even more, and they have all of the attributes of people you hate, so you'll hate them. You'll just find them appalling and not want to spend any time seeing them. If anything, the game will annoy you more because they have to live in the background and you can't just kill them at the start and then get on with collecting your guns. If you love Twitch streamers, then that's an insult to you. It directly is mocking something that you think is cool and basically doing the most extreme, unpleasant, uncharitable parody of something that you enjoy that you could possibly come up with. So it doesn't matter which side of the equation you fall down on, you're going to hate them.
Yeah. And there's basically... And they're going to kill off the character you probably made in Borderlands 2.
Because everybody
if you played Borderlands 2.
Maya, because it was a fun tool set. Except for Fern, because he likes Gunzerker a lot. For some reason.
Salvador is the objectively most overpowered character in the game. But
I guess that's true.
And Maya was objectively the weakest, but everybody played Maya because she was the most fun.
Max played Krieg, I think.
He was DLC, though.
Yeah, it was interesting, though. Playing alongside a Krieg is an interesting experience.
So... Oh, dear, oh, dear. That's the Borderlands rant. I will finish it up after the show just to say it's done. And I don't even think I'm going to do True Vault Hunter mode. I don't. I want this game gone.
The nicest thing I can say about Borderlands 3 is that our rant about its manifold failings was shorter than the one for DMC.
Well, I don't have a personal attachment to Borderlands. I'm just mostly talking about it because we got to fill time.
I don't think that we needed to have a personal attachment for DMC to be bad. Remember, I don't have a personal attachment to DMC. Like the franchise.
Yeah.
And yet we still managed to talk about how awful it was for 5 straight hours.
Well, I mean, it's Dino, man. Have you seen him?
You know, I just realised that the lead character in my party on FGO is Shuten, and that's probably going to get our stream banned.
Oh, good job, Vol.
Oh, well.
She is actually an 800...
She's actually an 800-year-old ogre or something. YouTube.
Yeah, something like that.
I don't know how old she is. It is greater than 18.
I'll get Fern to prune the video out later.
So yeah. I think that's Borderlands, and that's really all I had time to poke at, because I wanted to really... I really did just want this game in my belt to complain about it.
Yeah, but that was the same as with DMC Devil May Cry, wasn't it?
Oh, I platted Dino. I hated Dino so much that the hatred went from I need to play this just to get it under my belt to I need to understand this game on an intricate level to be able to absolutely blast anybody's ass who tells me it's good.
And it's the only Devil May Cry game I have ever finished.
Oh, man. Dino's a thing.
Right, so...
Games industry, what's wrong with you?
So, hopefully there are some other topics that we can speak of. What else has happened other than that?
So, we can tangent.
Where are we
and a nice segue.
To? Where are we headed?
To a new Switch port for Devil May Cry 3. It will have a little something extra, says Capcom.
Oh my.
This was from Matt Walker, the US lead, who is actually pretty involved with the game.
It's going to be like a skin to let you play as Dino, isn't it?
If it is, I'm going to Nintendo's office and I'm flipping tables. No, I think they learned their lesson. I think they realized after just how much praise DMC5 has gotten and how blown out Dino has been with the fan base. Like, the woke scolds and the game journos may like Dino. Nobody else likes Dino. Dino doesn't sell when Dino gets a costume.
They're just playing so coy with it.
So, I don't know what I'm hoping with it. But it could be a lot of cool stuff.
It'll probably be something quite small, because it's sort of hard to go back and jam something new into a game that old just when you're doing a port. But
yeah,
like so they aren't going to add like another playable character or something probably.
Who knows what they might do? The official tweet from the Devil May Cry Twitter is 3 little extra features coming to hashtag Devil May Cry 3 special edition for Nintendo Switch. Any guesses to what they might be? Ellipsis question mark. Full reveals on Pizza, January 16th. Guitar, January 30th. Devil Face, February 13th. Pizza.
These
are all emojis when I'm interrupting it with what you call it.
There should be laws against emojis.
Yeah, so
but I guess if there were laws against emojis, Ron Toye would beat his fiancée even more.
Yeah. Oh, there's I'm not as caught up on Vic as I want to be. Otherwise, we could use that as a time filler. But
I'm not caught up either. Apparently, there have been dates announced for appeals, but I haven't been keeping up with it.
Yeah. If one of these is Dante for Smash, I'm becoming a Smash tard.
No, you'll kill somebody. Like you'll commit manslaughter or something, and
I'll drive right through that Taco Bell.
Yeah,
right into Dante's smashing arms.
A smash turns you into a sociopath.
Straight through the Taco Bell.
Anyway,
who would actually try to kill somebody by driving a car at Taco Bell? Smash people? What's wrong with you?
Imagine if they stole all your crap on chance time.
I mean, that's worth an ice pick to the back of the head, but you truck through a Taco Bell over that.
I've heard Taco Bell's not great.
I mean, you probably did them a favor by giving them an excuse to renovate, because that wall probably had mold in it, but I don't know. Anyway, but yeah, it's coming. We don't have a clue what it is.
From Devil May Cry to Platinum Games, then.
Yeah, lots of good segues, but unfortunately this one's not so good news.
No.
Platinum Games has now got Tencent as its majority shareholder.
They just got so much money, but
it's all fake money.
Yeah, it's all dodgy Chinese money. Like, the reason why the Chinese are buying everything up is because they know that their currency will crash. So they need to buy other currency while they have time. I don't understand why everybody is just falling for this.
Don't let China buy your stuff.
It's just going to destroy the world economy if everybody gets entangled with the renminbi. It's just not a good idea.
Let's pretend you're a company like Platinum Games. You're not based in China. China comes in and says, "Hey, we're going to give you, enough China bucks to buy a majority stake in your company. So about 15% probably on average." Like, okay, and you take that China buck deal. As soon as the China buck dies, you don't lose the full 15%, but you're going to lose that 10%. You're going to lose about 2/3 of the money they put in your company, because they're going to have to default on parts of it. So you're just tanking the total value of your company and lowering the quality of your product, because if they're majority shareholder, guess what they get to do? Have creative influence for no reason.
Yeah, it's like these things are not... There isn't actually a pallet of cash sitting somewhere that represents that investment. It's all basically just promises.
Yeah.
But as long as those promises are backed by Chinese money, they are worth precisely nothing, because there's no reason to believe that economy will continue to exist unless they manage to successfully enslave the entirety of Africa, which is also a possibility.
I mean, yeah, you just can't trust the China bucks. The China bucks are as good as monopoly money.
Well, the problem is that the way that the China buck is not worth the same as monopoly money now, but it will be worth monopoly money if the can gets kicked down the road far enough. It's just that the position on the road of that can is far enough along that it's not really getting appraised correctly. But I'm fairly sure that the only thing that's been going on with this massive foreign investment being carried out by China is to turn their money into other people's money, so that they're insulated against the loss of all of their domestic money.
Because what's going to happen is, pretty soon, we're in Schrodinger's kick the can down the road. We can't see the last 10% of this road, so we don't know where that can's at in that 10% until we open it up. But as soon as it hits the end, we won't need to know where it is, because it'll all be gone.
Yeah, 10
That
cents
was terrible. I think that was my worst metaphor yet.
It is incredibly convoluted and nonsensical, yes. But,
I made some pretty bad ones before, but that one I'm proud of. It was so bad.
Yeah, I mean, I can sort of understand why people are sucking into it easily, because the gaming as a business is quite volatile. Like, they like to say that it's recession-proof, but even if you decided to grant that gaming was recession-proof, even if you decided to leave out considering the fact that people are not recession-proof, it doesn't really matter if you're recession-proof if the economy itself absolutely collapses. If you end up trying to build a foundation of capital based on promises that can't be fulfilled, like that's not going to proof you against anything. You are just, even though let's grant the recession-proofness, the individual companies are volatile. Individual companies within the gaming sector are volatile. They are not stable. Things can go from great to terrible very quickly. Taking on Chinese money as a way of hedging against that is not actually hedging against that. It is moving the point of failure to an economy that is outside your control, as opposed to keeping the point of failure internal to your own performance. It's not a good idea.
What are you going to do, Mr. Sato, president of Platinum Games, when you get a nice phone call from Tencent that says, "Oh, by the way, all our money just went poof"? And you're going to go, "Well, how much of it's insured and how much of it is already in liquid assets in our country?" And they're going to call you up and go, if you're lucky, they're going to say, "About a third of it." And you're going to be like, wait, so about 10% of my company's stock just gone? And they'll be like, "Yep." And you'll be like, "What?" And then you'll be like, "I better fire some people."
I think part of the reason that people buy into this idea of it being a good investment is probably because most people, even people that know better, mentally they envision it as a company being handed a pallet of cash.
Yeah,
When
but
there is
it's
no
not.
pallet of cash, it's not somebody turning over millions and millions of dollars to Platinum Games for them to spend, keeping the lights on and paying people to do things. No, it's just all promises. It comes down to being all promises. I mean, a certain amount of money changed hands in the electronic sense, but it doesn't necessarily mean that money filters down to the actual expenses level.
Yeah.
They are basically
feel...
just trying to translate their money into they're laundering it, basically. They're laundering dodgy money.
Yeah, they know the China buck is going to crash. So they need to go to every Western company they can and go, hey, you want to hold this nice money for me and turn it into your money? And then when China explodes, they're either going to peace out with the money that they did manage to get converted into a liquidable asset by investing in your company, or they're just going to tell you too bad, so sad.
Yeah, the reason why they're throwing so much capital around, look at Tencent. Tencent has been throwing huge amounts of capital into the video games market in America for a long time now. But where have you seen them ever make that money? It's not actually coming from anywhere. It's just because the currency is being manipulated in China. They are not, making money, so much money hand over fist that they were able to throw around more money than EA and Activision put together, two publishing giants in the US. Like they aren't raking things in such that they can just chuck those massive quantities around. They're just, acquiring money of dubious worth and then laundering it into another market. This is all going to bite everybody in the backside. Like, for the longest time, we thought that there would be a games crash due to declining quality, nickeling and diming, DLC and that. But no, it's ultimately
China buck.
It's going to be Tencent. Tencent will be the reason.
It'll be and Tencent wielding the China buck with great fury and anger, and it will thrust its China bucks deeply into the chest of every single game company.
To do that?
Because Fern's not here.
I guess that's true.
And when it's not there, you ain't got anything to plug the wound, so everybody's just gonna bleed out.
Oh well, so there's another company has fallen to the 10-cent scourge. None of them are ever going to be able to buy that interest back. I don't know why they seem to think it's such a good idea.
You're just taking unnecessary financial risk when you let Tencent in the door.
I guess they're just all optimists by nature, I guess, what it comes down to.
That or they genuinely don't know because they're ignorant and idiots.
Well, I mean, most ignorant people tend to be optimistic in that particular sense when it comes to business. Like they think that they're going to make back more money than they paid out in shares in exchange for that. Like obviously they take the deal because they believe that they will turn a profit on it. But I don't think that that's necessarily a very reliable goal. I just think that in decreasing entanglements with Chinese markets is a better idea all across the board at this point. There's no way of knowing which way they're going to go. Like eventually they will probably collapse, but the mode of that collapse is very unclear.
Yep.
Right, what else has happened? They revealed the logo for the PS5, I guess, which looks exactly like, what everybody would have thought.
Everybody expected.
And for some reason,
the PS4 logo, but with a 5.
For some reason, people are perturbed by this, but I'm not sure. They announced at the Consumer Electronics Show that they're going to be revealing more stuff over the course of time, so they haven't actually announced anything like a release date or specs or anything like that, but they are bragging about the same things that most people are bragging about, like having a fancy SSD in there, which honestly is the biggest point of improvement for consoles in general at this point. Ray tracing, which nobody wants to code for because it's a complete dog to do. 3D audio sound, which is on every single brag sheet for every single console in the history of ever, even though I don't know what it means. haptics and adaptive triggers, which is basically not substantially different to what we already have, and Ultra HD Blu-ray support, which nobody has the TV to display. So we didn't learn anything helpful. Period. What we did learn is that there's clearly an FGO fan on the media team that prepares the montages for Consumer Electronics Show, because of all of the characters from all of the IPs Sony owns, which is a huge number, MASH was the only one who had a spoken line in the montage.
I haven't seen the montage.
Hold on, I think I've got you can spot FGO and Babylonia numerous times in the montage, but I've got a link somewhere, if I can find where I put it, to the particular part. That's Devolver making a bad joke. Where is the link? Here we go. Put it in the show chat. I've lost my Discord window now. Show chat. Here we go. Yeah. Okay, next topic. Dell, under their Alienware label. Remember Alienware? Does anybody remember Alienware, aside from being a joke in Terra General chat? They've announced a new portable PC device. They are straight up referring to it as a handheld Windows PC, and it's a. I don't know if they're calling it the Concept UFO. I don't know if that means that that's the name of the device, or that it's a concept mock-up that is not actually something that they've got plans in place for the mass manufacture of yet. But the easiest way for me to describe this is to say it's a Nintendo Switch, because it's a Nintendo Switch. It has Joy-Cons. It has a screen. It looks like it's roughly the same dimensions as a Nintendo Switch. It's a Windows PC instead.
And I can already hear the footsteps of Nintendo's army of lawyers
maybe
pacing around the room as they do prep work.
Maybe Dell is confident that they've got a way through patent infringement on this, but I think it'll be a tough argument for them to make, because yes, surely I expect they're going to put in there different hardware, very different hardware, since, you know, Nintendo Switch has all the horsepower of an 8-year-old mobile phone. They'll have probably different accelerometer setups, different control schemes. It'll run on an OS, probably a cut down version of Windows, and optimized and streamlined version of Windows with things designed specifically for this device and so on. Like, there's a lot of things that they can change, but ultimately it looks like this so that when the consumer sees it, they are reminded of a Switch. There's just no feasible way to argue otherwise. There's nobody who looks at this and doesn't see the connection, and that qualifies as trading on substantial goodwill built up in accordance with the Switch appearance brand. So they're going to be in rough legal waters. I don't see how they're going to get this one through there. Add to that the fact that Alienware products are always twice the price they deserve to be, and on the rare chance that this gets to market, it's not going to sell any to anything but the handful of rich idiots, because their hardware is always ridiculously overpriced when it works. It is Dell after all.
Yeah, Dell is they ain't known for their products lasting.
They are known for selling easy off-the-shelf computers at big box stores, and that's about it.
And they will fall apart on you in less than like 5 minutes. I had a laptop that I took to my very first few classes at college when I first started. And I bought it brand new, and it was a Dell. And that thing started flaking and falling apart, and the screen up front wouldn't like stay anymore. The little hinges that held it at different angles as you pull up the laptop screen completely broke, so it was just floppy, and I had to have a back stand for the screen.
Wow.
And I'd done nothing particularly rigorous to this poor thing. It just died.
Wow. Right. Do we have... Oh yeah, it says down here in this article that it's a prototype and not greenlit for the market. Well, it ain't going to get greenlit from the market because you're going to get C and D'd. Right, what else have we got? Well, speaking of the Switch, there's a new Switch model has been announced. It's going to be coming out this year. We have given PSAs in the past about Nintendo pulling shady things with Switch models and not clarifying necessarily which particular model is being sold in particular bundles and so on and so forth. But the rumours have it that this is going to be a new console going into production end of first quarter 2020, and it's going to be a magnesium alloy chassis rather than plastic with a more powerful CPU, which is not hard since every CPU on Earth is more powerful than the Switch one now. So yeah. Hello. Pickle.
I'm here.
Okay.
I'm just
It's just that my bars dropped down to 2. And I wasn't sure if I was still connected. Right, have we got anything else to talk about? We've been live for 2.25 hours.
I think that's a good point to call it.
Alrighty then.
All right, folks. Email topic of the week. Tell Fern he needs to never leave us ever again.
Yeah, because it's just terrible all round. Like, I'm scared. It's like I've been left alone in a strange place.
I feel when Fern is not here, he's the mental click in my head to control myself and not say all the things that will get us fired.
But generally speaking, we use him as an emotional crutch to get us through these shows.
He's the stable, normal one.
Yeah, I don't even know what stable and normal look like. I've never been there before. Does it taste good?
I don't know. Can you eat it?
Who knows? But we will leave you guys there for the week. Hopefully we'll be back next week with a better show, one that is more coherent and run by a frog with a great deal more technical aptitude than the either of us have at manipulating streaming software and broadcasting applications on YouTube.
Yep.
And he can give us a report on how he enjoyed Spamalot.
Ham and jam and Spamalot. Alright. We will see y'all next week with a Fern and with not as terrible of a show. So, until then, sayonara, bye-bye.